All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Good evening, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts.
I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa.
Apparently my voice is cracking.
Well, you know, there comes an age when you start getting hair in places you didn't have before.
Lord, I don't need any more.
You're telling me. You've seen me without my shirt.
Correct.
Yeah, a little Ewok. That's all I am. So we are continuing our I have to apologize. I'm sorry. That was absurd. That was ridiculous.
That was ridiculous.
That is an aside that will not be happening again. All right. I am elevating that to HR, and someone is going to be taking care of that. So we are continuing our retrospective on water monsters as we continue the year of the monster. And so I think we definitely started on a high note, right? We started with Jaws, and Jaws is like, I mean, who doesn't love Jaws? In fact, I've never met a single person who has ever said anything other than, I love that movie.
Exactly.
Then we continued on to Lake Placid, and Daniel and I were very pleasantly surprised that Lake Placid not only held up, but actually, I think, aged really well. I remember not liking it nearly as much as I liked it when I saw it last week. And then when Daniel and I were deciding, what are we going to do week 3? Because we already had week 4 set. Like, what are we going to do week 3? We kind of looked at each other and said, it has to be Piranha 3D.
It had to be.
It had to be. So in a section that we're calling It's Jaws on a Lake Again, we're talking Piranha 3D. This is the 2010 Piranha, which is not the original. It is not a remake either. Neither is it the third in the Piranha series. How we stumbled upon Piranha 3D as the title, I have no idea. But thank the Lord that we did, because its sequel, Piranha 3 Double D, might be the most aptly named movie of all time. So, Daniel, it's 2010. Piranha 3D is out in theaters. What are you doing? And how do you feel about it?
So in 2010, when this movie hit theaters, this was the crest of the wave of let's do everything in 3D. Yeah. And the crew behind Piranha 3D, so written by Pete Goldfinger and Josh Stolberg, they were like, you know what? Let's have some fun with this. Let's make a 3D movie that's reminiscent of when 3D hit drive-ins. Let's make a 3D movie that people don't care if it looks good or looks shitty. They're going to have a good time watching it. And they just embraced every bit of that with this movie. There are so many words that you can use to describe Piranha 3D, but I have narrowed it down.
All of them correct.
Yes, exactly. I have narrowed them down to one exact word that is the only word that you need to describe Piranha 3D, and that is gratuitous.
Yes.
And everything about this movie is gratuitous. The violence, the nudity, the comedy, all of it is so ridiculous and so over the top. If you like Sharknado and you have never seen this predates Sharknado by 3 years. This paved the road to Sharknado. We talked about that a little bit with Lake Placid, how it opened the doors to all of these sci-fi originals. This movie is the blueprint for Sharknado. It is gratuitous nudity, gratuitous violence, dirty jokes, and cameos. I mean, and if there's and it, there's there, that's exactly what Sharknado is. This movie I have not seen since I saw it in theaters in 2010. And my roommate and I were having so much fun watching this last night, just laughing hysterically. It's funny to watch it and just kind of go back and see. It's like, oh, yeah, remember it was in 3D. Like, guy throws a drink at the camera, stuff like that. So much about it was so ridiculous. Strike that. Everything about it was so ridiculous. There's not one like salient plot point in this. We sung the praises of Jaws feeling like a realistic movie of how people would react and how these things could happen. This movie took that and then inverted it. This movie is Nega Jaws. It is
Yes.
bizarro Jaws. It is everything that Jaws isn't, while also still being Jaws on a lake again, and that's incredible.
That is kind of precisely how I feel. There's nothing about this movie that should work.
Right.
Like if you were to describe this movie to someone, you would sound like an insane person. It sounds like a fever dream. And then you're like, no, but hang on a second. It's got an all-star cast. And it does.
It
Like
does.
this cast is stacked, man. All right. Looking aside from like the stellar cast of models that's in this, right? You have legitimate actors like Elizabeth Shue, Christopher Lloyd, Richard Dreyfuss, Jerry O'Connell, Ving Rhames, Adam Scott. Like these are real actors, man. Like these people get nominated for things,
Right.
you know? That's crazy that every single, and this is why I know that this movie is not only knows what it's doing, it knows that what it's doing really damn well. Because when these many stars, and these are stars, right? When these many stars look at the script, speak with the director, and say, no, I'm on board. I got to do this thing. You know that everyone is in on the joke and that everyone is very aware of the kind of movie that they're making, and they want to make that kind of movie, not doing it because that's what the budget dictates they do, but because
Right.
they want to make that kind of movie. The other thing that I think is really interesting about this is you're right. This is at like the height of the 3D craze that happens at this time. 3D has come and gone multiple times, right?
Right.
But in this time, like 3D is coming back, and it's like, dude, it's in 3D. It's awesome, right? Like what's better than Jerry O'Connell's severed penis falling from a boat? It's when in 3D, this thing gets eaten by a piranha by lunging at the screen. And it comes at you in all its 3D glory, you know? So it wasn't actually filmed in 3D. It was converted to 3D. It was filmed like standard and then converted to 3D. However, they did this as a cost-saving measure and kept in mind, we're going to do 3D here. So when they filmed it thinking, this is going to be 3D. This is going to be 3D.
Okay.
And so they had all of the 3D gags in their minds. And because of that, it became such an amazing 3D conversion. Like it's really hard to tell that this thing is not filmed in 3D.
I
You
did
would
not
need
know
special
about
lenses. You need special lenses, special cameras to do these things. And so like that is amazing. There's a lot about this movie on a technical level that I think is really interesting, not necessarily good. Most of it actually is pretty good, but some of it, what isn't good, is really not good purposely. And I love that we're going to be able to on this show, because he doesn't need this, but for the show, I feel like Alexander Aja is going to be redeemed, because the
Yes.
only other time we've talked about Aja on this show was predating the current version of Shiver. So going back to Shiver like 1.0 many years ago, and we did High Tension, and I absolutely shit all over High Tension.
As
So
well you should have.
yeah, I want to talk about this in a positive way. I want to talk about Alexander Aja and sing his praises, because he does deserve his praises to be sung about this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is you mentioned just people seeing this and being like, I'm on board. I mean, you're looking at, so in 2010, these people are all at varying degrees
Mhm.
of fame, but you've got to assume that nobody was exactly, cashing big checks off
No,
Piranha 3D. You know, this is a movie that somebody like an Adam Scott or an Eli Roth looks at and is like, well, yeah, I just want to do that. Like, yeah, whatever. Just write me a check. Just, you know, make sure I'm on screen this much time or whatever. So as we get into screen time and talking about that in a section we're calling Party People Playing oh man, Party People Playing Piranha Patty Cake. Hey, let's talk about the story that we get from Piranha 3D, because this movie does open with just the right amount of story, in my opinion, for setting all of this up. So what did you think about just the meat of Piranha 3D?
Listen, I think that there's enough meat here to satiate even the most carnivorous of people.
Exactly.
Now, you're not going to gorge yourself on meaty story, but what you are going to have is just enough connective tissue to get you from one thing to the next. And is it all going to make sense? I think it does in its own way. I think it does make sense in its own way. And because the way that things happen and who those things happen to, I do think that the story here works, and the story really is unimportant, because this is one of those movies where I don't think it's worse for its story. It's certainly not worse for its story, but it's also not better for its story. Like the only thing that this movie needed to work is exactly what's on the poster: boobs and blood.
Right.
You know, that's and summer movies tend to be that way. If it's flashy in every sense of the word, if it is exciting, dude, you're sold. You know, you'll have people lining up around the block to buy tickets. When you actually have a story that kind of makes sense and it leads to humorous moments, because these things have been actually scripted pretty well, and the characters are absurd. They're not real people. Right.
No.
I always use the example of Springfield. This feels like Springfield. These are not real people. They're Simpsons characters. But the fact that they're really well defined within the confines of the little box that this character ticks, the situations become really, really interesting. Again, in their own way, because really the interesting part is how funny it is. And I love when we get a horror comedy that's not afraid to really lean into the comedy. I feel like a lot of times horror comedies are they suffer from identity crises, where it's like, oh yeah, but I'm also a horror movie. Look how edgy I can be. Or like, oh no, this is the funny part. And these things can coexist. It can be brutal without being mean. And I think that that's something that this story really kind of gets. The story is fun. It's summer. And as someone who was like, I had just graduated from college. I had just gotten married when this movie came out. And this is what my life was like. Not being attacked by killer piranha, but like going out, having a great time, not thinking about consequences. It's just like, hey, we're living our life. We're young, we're dumb, and we're ready to rock and roll. Like, that's how we'll finish that.
Yeah, this, you know, I love that, you know, this movie opens with Richard Dreyfuss, you know, dressed obviously as Hooper, getting eaten by the piranha, because there's an earthquake that opens a fissure into a subterranean lake that has not been seen for, you know, what does Christopher Lloyd say, 3 million years,
something like that,
since these piranha have been around. And where does it happen? It happens at Lake Victoria, a spring break town that only has 4 cops. That's it. They got 4. That's the entire police force of Lake Victoria.
And I got 3 of them are Ving Rhames.
Yeah, exactly. I got 20,000 spring breakers coming. That's a lot for you and your 3 cops, Elizabeth Shue. And then that's all they need. And then they're like, okay, so there's piranha in the water and it's spring break. You know where we're going with this. See if you can keep up. And that's what they do. Then they just start hitting us with the absurdity. Then they hit us with, oh yeah, well, Jerry O'Connell directs a Girls Gone Wild thing, you know, and And he's, so he's on a boat filming these women, and he recruits the local guy to scope out some spot where they're going to be alone. And it's all so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Every bit of it is so ridiculous, but it's exactly like you said. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. If there had been some sort of serious subplot about some relationship, or let's toss it into the 2020s, if there'd been some sort of grief subplot, this movie actually doesn't hit as hard. Because you're right, if they had been like, no, look, we can be this and we can be funny, then it wouldn't have been as funny, and it would have been one of those things where you just missed both targets. Instead, they focused on the one, and they just gave us something absurd, and it's great. I mean, it's so funny. To anybody who's ever been to like a college spring break thing, there's a lot of this stuff that's relatable. Just people on boats, and everybody's drunk, and wet t-shirt contests, and nobody's paying attention to anything. There's a scene where Ving Rhames has got a guy in the water, and he's like, town rule, you throw in one piece of trash, you got to pick up 10. And he's just like scooping up all these bottles and crap on the top of the water. Just stuff like that. That was the only bit of realism we needed. Was like, yeah, sure, spring break's kind of like this, but it's a movie, so also we're gonna do all this other stuff. I loved that they didn't go hard on the science of it. They're like, yep, lake underwater. It's been there a long time. And they're like, yep, these piranha haven't been around for a long time. Cool, they're back. Piranha hunting packs. All right. And then that's it. They're like, that's all the science you get. There's literally a moment where like, what do we do? And he's like, well, they're fish. You can catch them or you can kill them. And it's like, yes.
Oh, yeah. You can do that with fish.
Yeah. Just little things like that just kept this movie going. And like I said, my roommate and I were just laughing at every turn. We're just laughing hysterically. Like, and I talked about the word for this being gratuitous. The blood, the gore, the violence is almost the wrong word, because it's so over the top. It's not violent.
Comedic,
it's
almost.
just comedic. Yeah. But the blood and the gore in this also lend themselves to moments where you can just laugh. You just there's one kind of serious moment, the aftermath of the piranha finding like the spring breakers, and you get this one weird kind of Saving Private Ryan, people getting their bodies dragged out of the water and they're missing limbs, and it's slow-mo and there's music playing in the background. But even
my favorite is the guy that's getting like pulled out of the water, and then the bottom half of his body drops out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Even when the shit gets so ridiculous, like it gets so gory, and you get this moment where you're like, I feel like maybe this could have been serious. At this point, everyone and everything is so invested into the comedic element of this movie that you laugh when that happens. The guy is being carried out of the water by two people and just splits in half. And my roommate and I, tears streaming down our faces as this man's entrails just fall to the sand. And that's what they wanted from this movie. And I love that they committed to it.
And it would have been really easy, I think, to put out a casting call for people with with actual limbs missing to make this even more brutal and realistic, I think. But they didn't go that route, because the majority of what you see in that scene is literally just people with red paint splattered on them.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of like splashing water and screaming. And I do think it's an effective scene, because what physical like violence we see on the people, like the gore that we see, is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
I will say that, and the effects are pretty convincing here, because the effects here were done by Greg Nicotero.
Yep.
So when we do actually see any sort of like gore or viscera, like, it is fucking nuts. The Jerry O'Connell one to me is like one of those where it's like, holy shit, I hadn't seen this movie since 2012, right? Because I saw it when it came out in 2010. And then I remember renting it at Blockbuster and seeing it with my friend, so that we could go watch Piranha 3 Double D, right? And then I don't think I've seen it again since then. But I do remember the way it made me feel when I saw Jerry O'Connell and like literally half his body was missing. It was just like fucking skeletal. And I was like, holy shit. Like that's a crazy thing. I don't think I had ever seen that before in a movie. So in its own way, I think that it does kind of push the boundaries of what is acceptable gore while still not letting you feel icky about what it is that you're watching, which is a really tight line to toe. And I think someone who is in this movie momentarily, Eli Roth, is a perfect example of how like that tight line is really easy to snap.
Yes.
Because the Hostel movies, I think, are those where it's like you have to really be into the torture porn thing to get into this kind of movie. Whereas something like Terrifier is so good at towing that line. It never snaps. And that's something that happens here where it's like, yeah, like I'm seeing people that are being eaten alive. And the CG is awful intentionally, right?
It's so
because
bad. It's so bad.
It's really easy to think like, oh, this is 2010. This is, 14 years ago. Like CG wasn't as good as it is today. But 2007 is when Transformers is released. And if you've seen Transformers at all recently, that shit still looks good. It still looks really, really good. Iron Man was 2008, and that still looks absolutely spectacular. So the call to make this look not just like it doesn't keep up today, but like it didn't keep up back then, that was an intentional thing. And it was, I think, the right call for the story, because the story is ridiculous. But as ridiculous as it is, they hit all the right beats. This was written by a group of guys and produced by a group of guys that knew what they wanted to do. This is a love letter to the 70s satire monster movie. That's really what this is, because like you have the scientist who knows all the science and gives you all the exposition that you need in that one scene, and it doesn't matter what the fuck he says. It could have said that this thing was descendant from ladybugs that came from Saturn. It doesn't fucking matter, because it's fucking Doc Brown telling you
exactly
what it is, and he's got a John Waters mustache. Why? I don't know, but it fucking works because he's scientist, man. He's mad scientist. And you've got the badass cop. You've got the Ving Rhames in there, right? Why does he take a shotgun and just start blasting indiscriminately into the water? He's blowing off more legs than he's saving. But I'm here for it, because these are the beats that we need in this kind of movie. We need those scenes because these are the scenes that we grew up watching and loving. Hate loving, but loving. This story is absurd in exactly the right ways that you need it to be.
Yeah, you're typing the Jerry O'Connell scene where he's, you see, and it's this really shocking image of the whole lower half of his body just eaten down to the bone, and you get this, oh my gosh! But then what do? They remind you, hey, this movie's funny because what does he say? They took my penis. They took my penis. They took my penis. And what are his final words? Wet t-shirt. Wet t-shirt. Like it's so absurd. And it was it was so good. You said like the Eli Roth character, he's running this wet t-shirt contest on like a floating sound stage with a DJ and everything, DJ Chocolate Thunder. And and Ving Rhames is trying to get all these spring breakers' attention, fires his gun into the air. They all get quiet. He tells them, hey, get out of the water. Shit's trying to eat you. And what do they do? He's like, play the music again. And then he just goes back to hosing down these women. You know, it's like, yeah, that is a remarkably accurate representation of what spring break would be like if they suddenly said, hey, something is here trying to eat you.
Yeah.
I love there's a scene in this where right before the shoreside massacre, where they're all getting there and you're like, all right, who's going to get eaten first? Who's going to get eaten first? The chick in the inner tube gets her ass eaten first. That's how we're going to do it. And it's like, yep, that's exactly what I hoped you were going to do. You know, like it's just, it's fun. It's fun. This is the type of movie that I feel like now this is not like Lake Placid where you can throw it on for anyone and anyone will enjoy it. But I feel like anyone who
This is niche.
Yes, I feel like it, but I feel like anyone who has ever used the phrase "I like horror movies" can enjoy this. This is very much like you said, a love letter to the genre. This is the type of thing that guys like us can watch and just we can respect the effects, we can laugh at the jokes, and we can just have fun with this. But it's so it's so gory. There are so many great effects in this. The budget of this film was $24 million. And when you look at the cast, you know that a good chunk of that had to go to paying people. So then you go, okay, well, but then you look at the effects and it's a lot of just red water and screaming. But that Saving Private Ryan scene that we talked about, there's a lot of really good skin effects and rips and tears and stuff like that for the people who make it out of the water. I would assume that a huge chunk of the budget went into that one scene because they sold out on giving you that intense moment. But like I said, at the same time, it came right on the heels of Ving Rhames dying a hero's death, taking out as many of these things as he could with a boat motor.
Yeah, and it's badass and in the most senseless way. Like he was literally, this is not figurative. I'm not being, I'm not exaggerating. He was a foot away from the shore.
Oh yeah, he was in like knee deep water.
Yeah, why? Why are you doing that instead of standing 12 inches further back? Or novel concept, he took that shit off a dinghy. Stand in the dinghy and just mow the lawn from the boat. But how heroic is that?
Exactly. But then even in his heroic death, they don't let it be 100% like dramatic and serious heroic death, because we get the moment where his head goes into the water and he's still cursing the fish, and we just get like the babbling of like his mouth falling into the water as he's still cursing. There was just never a moment in this where they weren't trying to sell some sort of joke. You get a moment where you're like, oh, you get the will they won't they moment. And it's like, oh, this guy's about to kiss what is obviously his crush for a long time. And then she just punches him off and goes and pukes off the side of the boat.
And they give us a great 3D moment with it too.
And I mean, and let's face it, we've all been there, right? I mean, if you've been to college, you've had the moment where it's like, I'm finally going to kiss her. And then she pukes. It's, gentleman's decision whether or not you decide to kiss her afterwards. That's between you and whoever you talk to at night when the lights are off. He chose not to. And that's, that's fine. Good for him. But it was just every serious moment is punctuated with some sort of gag, either figurative or literal, like the girl puking off the side of the boat. And they all hit, man. They all hit. The thing about this movie is there was never a moment where I was like, that didn't age well, or that was, now that I'm older and I'm looking through different lenses, that's not, no. All of these jokes are still just as good. Jerry O'Connell is always presented as a complete and total dirtbag. So you don't even have to feel bad about like rooting for everything that happens on the Wild Wild Girls boat or whatever. It's just, that's what was incredible was, the early 2000s and, or 20 years ago now. And it's always easy to look back on a comedy from 20 years before and be like, eek, This one doesn't do that. The jokes still land, and I still had so much fun.
And I think a lot of why that works is, I mean, obviously the writing was there. Age is French. And so I think that might have something to do with it. This wasn't directed by an American, and so his sensibilities are very European. And I'm not saying that elevated the movie at all, because it didn't. This is not elevated humor. This is not elevated horror. This is as lowbrow as it gets.
Correct.
But I think that to the French's credit, like being crass can be an art form too.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's something that Europeans do better than Americans. And that's there's nothing subjective about that statement. If you believe that Americans do crass as art better than Europeans, you're clearly American.
Exactly.
And I'm American, but I can look at this objectively and be like, no, man, they invented it, dude. They fucking invented it. British, French, Spanish, doesn't matter. Like, they invented the art of being beautiful assholes. So like he brought something of that there to it, where like you're not looking at Jerry O'Connell and being like, that's who I want to be.
Exactly.
You're looking at Jake, thinking like, I want to be Jake. Right now, you're also thinking, I want to be Jake on that boat.
Right.
But that's also a very normal reaction to what's going on as well, I think. The other reason why is because I think the cast is just amazing, right? So as we shift from story to characters in a section we're calling Richard Dreyfuss and Friends, and I think that just like the story, when we're talking about cast, it's going to be intimately tied to the story, and we're just going to keep weaving, bobbing and weaving
right
here. If you had to mention one person first that just, like that's the one, who would it be?
All right, look, it's not a that's the one situation, but it is a situation where I was like, I definitely know who that is. And while she doesn't have a spoken line in the movie,
are you going to
shout
mention
out to Gianna Michaels for
yes. That's what I was going to mention first.
In this movie, I'm sitting there and I'm watching this last night, and she's parasailing, and I was like, that's a porn star.
That's Gianna Michaels.
Yeah, and I was like, and my roommate's like, really? And I was like, I am 90% sure that's Gianna Michaels. And then you finally see her face, and I was like, yep, that's Gianna Michaels. He was like,
yep.
He was like, so wait, you were 90% sure before they zoomed in on her face? I was like, yeah. What part of the
wasn't her face I
are you
recognized?
watching? Exactly. Like, but that was a moment that really cemented how all in they were on this being what it was. She was obviously there just to be a great set of boobs, but then got this great death where when
what an amazing death. Yes.
So fucking good when they take off with the boat, so the sail goes back up and it's just her top half. Shout out Jaws and Lake Placid. It's just her top half, which is the half that most of us are intimately familiar with anyway. Like that was just so funny to me. And like I said, it really, as soon as you saw that, and like I said, if you're one of the people who recognized who she was, you were just like, yeah, okay, I get it. They're in on the joke. I'm laughing at the joke. This thing's a win all around.
Dude, I forgot that she was in this, right? But I mean, I forgot everyone that was in this. So I was watching, like my wife was kind of like half watching with me. She was working while I was watching. And I don't know how aware she is of, porn stars, certainly of porn stars from 15 fucking years ago. Right? And she saw me like perk up. So she was like, what happened? Like, because nothing had happened at that point. I was like, oh, that's Gianna Michaels. And she was like, oh, right. So like she didn't recognize her. but the name rang a bell.
But she knew the name, yeah.
But she knew the name. And one of the things I love about the way that this movie treats its characters is that oftentimes when you think it's going to zig, it zags, right? Because Gianna Michaels being number one, a porn star and kind of the porn star for the time, because she's coming, she's coming out like right as Jenna Jameson is like losing steam, right? I don't know that Jenna Jameson ever lost steam, but if she did, Gianna Michaels was there to pick up the slack, right? She's known, like you said, for her chest, right? And we see Gianna Michaels, she's parasailing nude, and then here she comes, and like the boat has slowed down. So we see her underwater photography, beautiful, right? The breasts are right in the water, and you know that the piranhas are there. What does your brain think instinctively? She's known for the boobs. The piranhas are coming, the boobs are in the water, right? They're gonna eat her breasts. That's what you're thinking, right? And then it zags when you thought it was gonna zig. Eats everything but the boobs.
Yep.
And so when she is lifted out of the water in the parasail, it's like, holy fuck. You gave me exactly what I didn't think you were gonna give me, which is exactly what I wanted.
Yes.
She is so amazing in this, because you're right, it's a bit part. It's not even an important part, but she seems to be having so much fun.
Yeah.
And how could you not? You know,
parasailing is great.
Parasailing's awesome. All right. And if you've never done parasailing before, you got to parasail to really see that, like, she's just having a grand old time here, right? But on top of that, I do think that like there's a little bit of acting that's going on here, because the scream at the beginning is certainly not the same as the scream that she gives us at the end of that scene, but it's supposed to make you think like someone's in peril.
Right.
And I had forgotten that was how that scene started. And I was like, oh shit, who's getting eaten alive? And then it's Gianna Michaels. And I'm like, holy shit, it's Gianna Michaels. And she's having a time of her life. And now I'm having the time of my life. So
one of us may have just froze. We may have lost Dave. If we did, I am going to continue, or Dave lost me. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to go. So we're going to keep moving. And because this movie is very much a cameo fest, it has a little bit of everything, like I said, which is the formula that became Sharknado. Right? By the end of Sharknado, everybody wanted a piece of the Sharknado pie. Everybody wanted to get in on it. It was something that you wanted to be able to say, oh yeah, I was in Sharknado 3, I was in Sharknado 5 or 17, however many Sharknados there have been. But this movie starts us off, like we talked about, with Richard Dreyfuss. Obviously, being Hooper, he's got on the Scully, he's wearing the all black, he's wearing his glasses, but he's just out on a boat drinking and fishing, right? Which is kind of what we saw Hooper do in Jaws to an extent. But he plays his role perfectly, because it's never a moment where you're like, where he's making a big deal about the fact that he's Hooper. You know, they don't even keep that name the same. They just have him there. And again, this goes back to that idea that this movie it's a thank you for playing, right? It's a love letter to fans of the genre, and it lets you know what you're getting set up with in this idea. So we've got Richard Dreyfuss there at the top, just doing the damn Hooper thing and just absolutely killing it. I mean, he was incredible. See if I can add Dave back. Are you there, Dave?
Yeah, I have. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You sound a little different, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm on my phone now. I have no idea what's happened. Wi-Fi seems to have gone down. So I'm just going to do this from my phone. And there's still a mic in front of me, so it looks nice, but no. It sounds awful.
I was just talking. I went ahead and I went into the Richard Dreyfuss cameo at the beginning.
Wait.
Hold on. We got the phone in front of it. We got double Dave here if you're watching us live.
And I'm back.
All right. So here we go. I was just talking about the Richard Dreyfuss cameo at the beginning and how it was absolutely just that was part of the love letter of the whole thing, is the fact that they didn't even make a big deal about the fact that it was Richard Dreyfuss. He was just there because that it was like, here's what you're in for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it added a sense of like authority to the movie. And I love that he died right at the beginning.
Right.
Because if you keep him around, now the movie's not about any of the characters anymore. And it's not even about the movie. It's not even about the piranha anymore. It's like, okay, but you know, he's the dude from Jaws. You know,
Yeah.
he's Hooper. And Hooper drives the boat. There he is. He's driving a boat. Haha. I saw it. So it was great to have him there. It's kind of like in Hatchet. Hatchet starts with Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger's right there in the swamp, and it's like, oh my God, it's fucking Freddy Krueger, right? But he's killed off swiftly, and it just kind of like sets the tone. It's like, oh shit, this is how they're gonna do it. And I love the fact that they didn't give us a special effects extravaganza with that first death. What they gave us was really shitty computer graphics.
Yes.
I guarantee you,
floating down through the water, man.
Just awful. I can guarantee you, I have no idea how it went, but I'm pretty sure it went like this, right? Nicotero sees a cut of the movie and he says, hey, that's Richard Dreyfuss. Jaws, half the reason why I got into this business. I'll make the greatest death scene for him. And Alexandra Aja did something like, no, it's okay. He's going to die anyway. Or something in French, right? And set up just the worst fucking looking death ever. Because he wanted to let you know that that was the kind of movie that this was going to be. The kind of movie where Richard Dreyfuss dies with less dignity than Jerry O'Connell does because of how bad the CGI is. And I love that. I love that that's the statement there. That we're not treating him like a dignitary here. No, he's gonna go out with the trash.
Yeah. So it was like I said, it was just great. Like that's the perfect way to open this, to say, hey, it's like Jaws, and then you kill him, you go, but fuck it, it's not Jaws. Like that's exactly what they do by killing him at the beginning, right? You just say, yeah, okay, bitch, you thought like that.
Yeah,
that's the opening scene to this movie.
I feel like if I don't mention Elizabeth Shue, I'm doing a disservice to, number one, police women everywhere, right? And number two, women named Elizabeth everywhere. And number three, to that specific Elizabeth. Because number one, I've had a crush on Elizabeth Shue since I've known what shoes are, right? And she does such a spectacular, and she does this in, I think, every movie I've ever seen her in. She's a totally different character. So like, she is a really good actress, even when she's trying to be a really bad actress. Right. But the thing is, like, I'm pretty sure that she approached this as like playing it straight. I think everyone did. I think everyone approached their role in this movie that way. Like if it was Shakespeare.
Yes.
Right.
Serious as a car crash.
So serious, deadly serious. Like if they were about to be eaten like killer piranha. Serious, you know?
Right.
That's something that like Michael Caine did in A Muppet Christmas Carol. He was like, I played it straight. I played it like I was Ebenezer Scrooge. She played it like a small town sheriff trying to keep her Arizona State spring break students from going absolutely fucking wild, right? And that was like a little thing that's in here. Like, I don't know if Arizona State already had that reputation when you were going to school, because you're just a little bit older than I am. But when I was going to school, it was like, okay, you want to get an education, there's a couple of schools that you can go to. But if what you want to do is party, you go to Arizona State.
You're correct. Yeah.
And by the way, they have like a 92% acceptance rate. So like if you don't know how to read, it's okay. You know, like
they'll learn you. They'll learn you.
They'll learn you some knowledge. Yeah. I, by the way, am an Arizona State grad. So, um, this is like the party school of the United States. And she treats this like I am law, I am order, and I am going to protect the people here. And the very first thing that she does is exactly what Roy Scheider does in Jaws, except that she seems to control what happens in this town.
Right.
She's like, we got to shut this down. And as far as you know, there's no one there to tell her no. She runs the fucking town as the sheriff. And they just kind of play it safe because they don't know exactly what it is that's going on. But man, what, like, there's so much strength in her, and yet she doesn't turn in it because, like, she's a single mom. It's very easy to play the single mom as like the overwhelmed, overworked woman. And I don't see that there. I don't see that in her at all. Like, she's constantly making time to check in on her kids. She's making sure that everyone is okay. Like, she is Mama Bear. And I love the fact that we got a character who was a single mother, who's got 2 kids and works too hard. She's a survivor, you know?
Yeah, no, I love that they immediately set that tone with the first time we see her. She ends up arresting that guy. Did you know touching the uniform of a police officer is assault? And it's just get your friends to drive you home. He's like, I wish you'd drive me home. And she just slams him down in the car and arrests him.
Awesome scene.
And it's like, okay, all right, and she does. She carries that very strong feminine role in this, and in a way that's never overbearing or so much in your face. She carries it without ever having to say, I'm a strong woman, which is something that's notable, because if you just show me, don't tell me, show me. You're an actor, right? So prove to me. I don't need you to tell me how strong you are if this is the way that you're acting. So she does a great job with that. I love that. You're right. There seems to be no one around who is above her authority wise. When we're talking Jaws, and it's like, well, yeah, he's got to deal with the mayor of Amity. No, I don't know that Lake Victoria has their own police force. I don't know that they have their own mayor. It seems to just be Ving Rhames and Elizabeth Shue, and they run this place. And
right.
That's fine. So
I'm now getting an image in my mind of the police force and like Adam Scott and like all these like little characters that pop up throughout the movie in a very Monty Python style. Like, oh, well, we take turns living in the castle and making executive decisions. It's like, well, what system of, how can you have that as a system of government? It's like, well, who decides what a system of government? Oh man, I would have loved to have seen a scene like that.
Yeah, so she did a phenomenal job with that. And you're right. It's when she first showed up, I was like, God, it's like Elizabeth Shue still looked amazing 14 years ago. She still looks amazing now.
Well, I mean, she's on The Boys, and
yeah,
and still, wow, I would love for her to beat me the fuck up and handcuff me.
Yeah,
like she did to that guy.
Not opposed to it. Because I always go back to Cocktail is the one that I always think about, where I'm like, ooh, Elizabeth Shue. But she did a fantastic job in this. We mentioned him earlier a little bit. I love my favorite, kind of, I've got 14 lines, I'm gonna make them count, character in this movie is Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah.
Because you said it when we were talking story. He's just Doc Brown. My roommate even said that yesterday. He was like, I love that Christopher Lloyd is just always Christopher Lloyd. And essentially he's just always Doc Brown.
Yeah.
He's so funny in this. He's immediately freaking out when he sees this. And then he just brings in this giant fossil and slams it down so he can tell them the tale of the piranha of old. And he's so into it. And it's the extreme version of like a Hooper that we had from Jaws, right? Where, he's just surrounded by these aquarium. We're not led to believe that it's because he's rich or anything. He's just really into fish. And so But he's got the whole "I gotta tell you," like that whole thing going on, and it's so perfect in what it is. But for him to get to deliver the final aha moment when he's like, the fish that they don't have, this one that you brought me doesn't have mature sexual organs, and you're like,
These are the babies.
yeah, yeah. He's like, these are the babies, and you're like, it's so funny that after all that came around, he gets to deliver that. And yeah, I mean, he's always Doc Brown, but I'm okay with that. Ryan Reynolds is always just Ryan Reynolds, and Deadpool just made $2 billion. So there are some people that's just how they work, and that's fine if you get them into the right roles. And this one was perfect for Christopher Lloyd.
It was absolutely perfect. And my face lights up when I see him.
Right.
And it doesn't matter whether it's Back to the Future. It doesn't matter whether it's Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh my God.
It doesn't matter if I'm watching reruns of Taxi. It doesn't matter if it's the Addams Family. Like, there is something about Christopher Lloyd that makes me happy. Even though he's a bad guy, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Like, he's really evil. He's twisted in that.
Super evil.
You remember the Dennis the Menace movie?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
He plays a bad guy there.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't want to have baked beans for a while because he is the bad guy, like 8 baked beans out of a can. Fucking weird, but like, he's got a way, he affects you that way. And like, I see him, obviously totally forgotten that he's in this movie. And the moment I see him, I'm like, oh my God, it's fucking Christopher Lloyd. I love this fucking movie. Only he can deliver that line. I can't even picture another actor delivering those lines.
Right. And it's a Back to the Future reunion for him and Elizabeth Shue.
Shue, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, that is where I first fell in love with her.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so there's many more people I want to mention in Kelly Brook, but the one, because I can only do one more, is going to have to be Jerry O'Connell.
Yeah.
Because he's perfect. He's absolutely perfect. And I can't think of a time in which I was watching Jerry O'Connell ever and thought, I'd rather see someone else. Never. I've never thought that, where I was like, oh, he was really good, but who else would have been really good in this? Is like Ryan Gosling. Never thought that before. Never. And the same is true of this movie. There is not a single actor that I think could have done what he did as good as he did it.
Yeah.
It's impossible. He's a dirtbag, but at the same time, like, there's an attraction to him. It's like, fuck, I would have gotten on his boat. I know I would have gotten on his boat. And I fucking hate guys like that. Yeah. Why would I have gotten on his boat? I don't know. I can't tell you why, Kelly Brook. But I don't know why I would have gotten on the boat, but I would have. I know, because there's a charm to him. There's a charm to that guy. And it might be that he's just playing himself, because it's really easy to forget how popular Jerry O'Connell was back in this time. But he was all over, like Late Night with Conan O'Brien. He was on all the time. He was on Leno all the time. So this is a guy that, like, we saw and got to know, whatever it is that he shows us, because you're never seeing the real person, right? But he felt like that all the time, where I was like, bro, you're kind of a dick, but like, I'm laughing.
Yes. Yeah, I love that this is 10 years removed from the end of Sliders, which, by the way, I figured out last night after watching this movie, is also streaming on Peacock. I know what I'm going to be doing now that I have finished. I just recently finished the show I've been watching, so I was like, well, now I'm just falling in love with Jerry O'Connell again, so I'm going to rewatch Sliders. But it was fun to see him go kind of this far with it, because so often with Jerry O'Connell, we got kind of the lovable goofball is really what he did so much of, before this. he was, this is the guy who made Kangaroo Jack, for fuck's sake.
Right.
Yeah.
and it's really easy to laugh at that, but it made a lot of money.
It really did. So it's really fun to see him go, like he went total douche. He went total dirtbag, right? Like he just 100% was all in. He was so much fun. I love the scene when he's screaming about how they're, it's like, you missed my money shot, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to the island. And then Steve McQueen, which is the guy's name.
Weird to say it that way, but yeah.
He's like, my mom's the sheriff, and he just gets stone faced and then immediately starts trying to wipe the coke from underneath his nose. It's like, just
let's go. Yeah, let's go see your brother and sister
island. Yeah, like just all of that stuff was so funny. And then when he's just hell bent on getting the boat, unstuck from all the seaweed and stuff like that, and you're constantly waiting for this guy to die because you're like, man, this guy is a douche. I can't wait till he dies. And then that just pays off in spades with the effects that we get from that we talked about earlier. He was great. So, I mean, those are most of the big ones. Lest you think that our knowledge of pornographic actresses incomplete. Yes, I know that was Riley Steele on the boat as Crystal. Yeah. Obviously, I know that she did her part. She was fine. But like I said, I referenced him just a second ago. That's Stephen R. McQueen is what he's listed as, because you can't just be Steve McQueen. As Jake Forrester. He did such a great job as the closest thing we got to a normal person in this movie. Everybody, like you said, everybody in this movie is, Springfeldian in their appearance and their behavior. Everybody's so over the top. This is just a guy who didn't leave home after high school. He babysits for his little siblings, and he just wants something out of life. We're led to believe that unless it's spring break, Lake Victoria's not anything to write home about. This isn't the type of place that's got a big tourism boom or where you're just happy to live and you want to raise a family. But even if you are, it definitely doesn't seem like the place you want to be if you're fresh out of high school and you got friends that have gone off to college and are now dating kind of DJs. And it definitely doesn't seem like this is the type. This is a pop punk hometown, right? Like this is the one that you desperately want to get away from. And he does I
hate this town. It's so washed up.
It's so washed
All my
up.
friends, they don't give a fuck.
Don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And he plays this role like you were talking about how Elizabeth Shue plays hers just so straight. He does too, because you can even tell that he has that moment where he's like, no, I don't want to go on this boat. This is gross. But also I'm 19 and my libido is 80% of my thinking. And look at that boat. And Kelly Brook just got on that boat. So why would I be anywhere else if I'd been invited to be on that boat? And so you can't fault him for making this decision. He tries to do like the nice guy thing. He'd be like, oh no, you don't want to come. Oh, hey, she said she's had enough. He's constantly giving us that really demure, guy who doesn't really know what he's doing, but also he wants to be a part of it. He's probably the only guy in this movie that's not some sort of caricature. He really does feel just like a normal guy. And so he did a great job of that. And I respect that.
Yeah. Yeah. You said it. You said it all. Yeah. We'll go with that. So we'll move on. And in the section that we have done for the last 2 weeks, and we'll do next week as well, we're going to talk about the monsters. So in a section we're calling It Came from the Deep, the piranhas. Is it piranhas or piranha?
I believe it's piranha, but Christopher Lloyd said both, and he's the expert. So
who am I to argue with him?
Exactly.
So the piranhas, how do you feel about them in this movie?
They're great. I mean, it's you give us it's the overwhelming force of it. One piranha ain't shit, but you get thousands of them and you've got a big problem. There's a reason that zombie movies are always about the zombie apocalypse. Because if you just had one dude who shambled into a town trying to eat brains, that's handled easily. It's about overwhelming force. It's numbers. It's the opposite of Jaws. Jaws is so big, Bruce himself is so big that it was okay that there was just one of them. We see that if you've just got the one fish, put it in an aquarium. Problem solved. There was never a moment where we got anything supernatural about these piranha. The one that was in Christopher Lloyd's tank, then it suddenly burst out and eat everybody there. It didn't mind control them, even though it did make eye contact and growl, which was super creepy.
That was, yeah.
But the fact that they never gave us an exact number, it always seemed like there were more. Because there's a moment in this where he blows up the boat and she's like, I'm looking at a bunch of dead piranha. And it's like, but you're also not near the beach where a shitload of them just ate all those kids. There's obviously multiple swarms of these. Plus, we've seen the eggs. We know they're not going anywhere. You terrify us with this in this movie by overwhelming us with these things. This is a frenzy of a water monster. It's whereas one thing that's really big, a crocodile, a shark, is hard to take out because it's so tough. This is hard to take out because yet one's the tip of the iceberg, if that. So you got a boat motor grinding them up. You got a shotgun just blasting into the water. None of that matters because there's always more.
And I think that they are effective monsters, and have been for a long time. Like, I feel like piranha were like quicksand when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I was constantly afraid that I was going to jump in a lake or a canal here in Miami, and I was suddenly going to get eaten alive.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I ever thought about that, because gators are a serious problem here, right? And I was afraid of gators too, right? But the ones that, like, really we should have been most afraid of here, because they're more numerous than even the gators, are the snapping turtles. Like, those things will fucking bite your dick off.
Yes.
And never once considered I'm about to get my dick bit off by a snapping turtle. Never. Right. And yet sometimes I was like, man, what if there's a piranha in there? Worse, what if there's a bunch of piranha in there? So they do a really good job of making them not just like regular piranha, but like these are super piranha. And because they're prehistoric and they explain that away with their pseudoscience, they can make them look cool. And they really, really do look cool. Like, this is a really mean looking fish. And like, I look at it and I know that there's something going on there. It's processing, right? Like, I never once look at a fish and think, you think. I never think you feel, right? Like, I have no problem eating fish. I can't eat cow. I look at a cow and I'm like, I feel sorry for you, right? But fish, all fucking day. Sushi, all fucking day, right? These things look like they think, like they feel, like they are, and that is scary. The fact that they have some sort of hive mind, right? And that there's like it's a never-ending supply, because down under that lake, like, it was tower after tower after tower of eggs.
Yeah.
And even from like the embryo stage, these things are aggressive.
Yes, they
like,
were mean.
yeah, man. So like, I love the design of these things. Do I miss the old school Roger Corman style ones? Maybe. Yeah, a little bit. But I also like that, like, the Roger Corman style stuff was done on a super, like, shoestring budget, and they made do with what they had, and so was this, like, and they actually were effective monsters within this tiny budget that they had to work with.
Yeah, what's funny about this when we're talking about like pseudoscience, the scene where he's trying to escape the boat, so he takes Jerry O'Connell's body and throws it into the water to
Mhm,
draw them away. There's actually like that's a real thing that people would do in the Amazon if they had to get a herd of animals
mhm,
across a river where there were piranha. They would go like or down upstream, and they would slaughter one of them and
mhm,
sacrifice that one, and then when they all swarmed to that one, they would rush all the rest of them across while they were distracted.
mhm,
So for just one of those tiny little things where it's like, yeah, for all the pseudoscience of this movie, that makes a lot of sense.
mhm.
I don't know why he had to tie. I don't know why the walkie-talkie floated and not the flare, but that's neither here nor there, right? You tie them together. That's how it works. I
Yeah.
did look it up, by the way. When you're speaking of piranha as a race, you say or you say piranha, but the plural is piranhas. So that is
So
why he said
multiple
both.
piranha fish are piranhas.
There it is. Yes,
Gotcha.
multiple piranha fish are piranhas. So,
Hmm.
yeah, no, I think that they were super effective. I think that they gave us exactly what we needed out of them, and I really enjoyed that. So, I mean, I think that one more thing, just the final Jaws reference that I've got to make here. Just absolute huge shout out to the cinematographer, John Leonetti, for the amazing dolly zoom that we got. Look,
Yeah.
I remembered what it's called. In my notes,
Mhm.
I wrote Jaws zoom, and then I was like, wait, Dave taught me what that was called. Yes, we get that amazing dolly zoom when she has the
Mhm.
realization that they're on a boat that is sinking.
Yeah,
And so I was like, there it is. There it is. One
yeah.
final homage, and it was perfect.
But
So
if you'll notice, right, and this is all credit to Spielberg, it's not as effective as it was in Jaws.
no, it
Um,
seems like it's at a weirder angle.
yeah, it's a strange angle, and the dollying and the zooming were not as extreme as they were in Jaws. Because what it is that the camera has to physically dolly backwards while it zooms in at the same
Right.
time. So what you're getting is the background is increasing and compressing at the same time while the subject stays the same size in the frame. And so what it seems like to me is that they probably did one or two takes and they're like, one of those has got to work. Whereas in Jaws, they probably spent like a week trying to get that shot because on film, it's like you don't know if you've got the shot or not until you see the dailies.
Right.
So, but it was a beautiful homage to Jaws. And you're right. The moment I saw it, I was like, fucking dolly zoom. That's the Jaws dolly zoom.
Yep. So I mean, there's really only one thing left to do here, and that is it's time for us to rate this movie. So, if you are unfamiliar, like we say every week, when we rate a movie here on Shiver, we only rate it against itself. Yes, we've referenced Jaws and things that these other people have done 100 times, but we're not putting Piranha 3D into the same rating scale as Jaws. They're obviously different movies of drastically different calibers. So, what we do is every week we create a unique rating system where we only rate a movie based on what it was trying to give us and how successfully it did that. And we mentioned it earlier. You said it off camera before we got started. There's only one feasible rating system for talking about Piranha 3D. So, Dave, out of a possible 5 severed Jerry O'Connell penises, what do you give Piranha 3D?
Listen, man, I'm gonna do something that is totally illogical here. This thing is perfect. All right. I can't think of a single reason why I would dock it a severed Jerry O'Connell penis. I can't think of one. All right, because everything that is a negative for this movie turns into a positive. It's magic.
Right.
I don't know how the fuck it works. All right, I don't understand. It's like a negative zone thing, right? It's like, hey, there's matter, yeah, but then there's antimatter, but yeah, it mixes, and now that's fucking how reality works. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. I'm giving this 5 severed Jerry O'Connell penises, and don't ask me to explain it. Don't ask me to like it either. Okay, but also don't ask me to like be ashamed of that. All right, I'm gonna stand by this and love it and hate it all at the same time.
Look, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I can't think of I can't think of half a Jerry O'Connell penis. Like
Not a chub.
Yeah, exactly. I can't even think of a reason to just take the tip off on this thing. I loved this. I
Mhm.
loved how much fun my roommate and I had watching it. I loved that it was so gratuitous in everything that it did. I love that there was never a moment where it didn't seem to be in on its own joke. I love that the 3D, like you said, they were like, no, if we're gonna do 3D, we're gonna throw drinks at you. We're gonna shake boobs right in your face. Like if you're in the theater, like, oh, reach up and touch them, like
Yeah. We're gonna
they
vomit on you.
exactly. We're
Yeah.
gonna vomit on you. They did everything that they wanted to do. This movie is what happens when somebody has just enough money and just enough friends to do something that you have probably talked and laughed and joked about forever. I can't find a single reason to take this off, to take any off of this. So I too am giving this 5 severed Jerry O'Connell penises, and I also will not be taking any more questions.
Okay, so there you have it. All right. Piranha 3D, 5 severed Jerry O'Connell penises, and thank you for coming to our TED Talk. So,
Exactly.
um, so there you have it, right? Please make sure that you are following us on all our social media because we're always updating you guys on what's going on there. As we start to settle into the school year, and I say we, but I do nothing on our social media. It's all Daniel,
I
right?
and I am settling in, and it is back, and it is active. So if you head to
Yeah.
shiverpod.com, you can find links to all of that social media. We're at ShiverPod, anywhere you might want to find us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, all of those at ShiverPod.
There you go. So, on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, fight you very